this a little closer to my face, to my mind drapes.
You guys have been doing a pretty solid job on like being on the mics for the most part.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I want to be on the mic. I'm going to do the whole show in this voice. Mike Feuz, how are you today?
Is this a jazz station?
Oh. It's kind of the voice that Cameron did in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. When he said, Rooney, I want my daughter outside of the school and I want her by herself.
So that's how they do it in their
The
family.
Sausage King of Chicago.
Classic film. Own it. Definitely own it. That and...
I have it too.
Doesn't.
You know, it's one of those movies that I always saw on television. And so it was always edited for time with commercials and stuff. And then and it's like there's all this extra scenes that I didn't know were there.
Key scenes they would take out on television?
Yeah, lots of scenes they took out. And not that many, but a couple. And I'm like, I don't remember the scene before. Very odd.
Oh, I feel like I've only watched it on DVD.
Yeah.
I think I saw it. Maybe I might have saw it. I don't know when I saw it first, but I got it on DVD. Still do.
Good for you.
It's in the.
You got to have everything on DVD now because they're taking everything down.
I know.
You're Gone with the Wind is gone. You talked about the content warning on Aladdin. I was just watching some Always Sunny stuff, and Hulu has removed like 5 episodes of Always Sunny from circulation because they're offended by them. It's ridiculous.
Now I want to watch those 5 episodes. I just saw the other day it was a satire article, but it was believable. So it was good satire that people were offended by Woody in Toy Story. They had some fake tweets, and then there was some fake tweets in the article that were just spot on. I was like, good thing they put satire bold at the top because you would buy it today.
Well, that's, it's gotten to the point where you can't tell the difference anymore between satire and reality because the world is so ridiculous now.
Babylon Bee might be the most truthful news website.
Pretty much everything they put out, I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's pretty funny.
You can tell a lot of truth through some fiction. So we are coming up on the election.
Yeah.
Thank God, get it over with.
I want it to be done. I'm tired of getting get out the vote messages, which is kind of what I want to talk about today is get out the vote messages and how annoying they are.
They infuriate me.
So we got an email from the CEO of Expensify, which is a company that handles expense reimbursements. And this has been all over the news, so I'm sure people know about it. But he was basically saying to all his clients, everyone who is part of his or who subscribes to his product, you have to vote for Biden. Our democracy is at stake. And I think it's crazy and sort of unprecedented to have a private company just like tell everybody how to vote straight up. And I think it made a lot of people angry. It made me angry. Because I don't go to this company for advice on how to vote. I go to them for expense reimbursement, It
was wild that he, I don't know, somehow was sitting there on his couch watching whatever on the news, scrolling social media. He's like, I'm going to blast all my customers, which is kind of an ethics violation, but I don't know how he connected the dots and was like, justified.
Yeah, I think he just thought everybody would agree with him and be like, yeah, we're all for Biden. We're going to go out and vote. But, clearly not everyone agrees with him. There's half the country that he reckoned without.
I haven't read too many of like the I see all the fallouts of people like I'm not using it and stuff, but is there a board that's going to hold him accountable, or does he? I
don't know. I doubt it. Hopefully a lot of people will cancel the service because it's not even about like, oh, I don't like Biden. It's about don't tell your customers how to vote. Like they talk about election interference and like Russia's trying to tell people how to vote. Well, it's election interference for him to tell people how to vote too, if you consider that. I mean, I don't really think it's interference to tell people how to vote. I think it's interference to actually go and interfere with the ballot counting and things like that. But it is pretty shady to do that it's not your role to tell people how to vote. Your role is to just be a CEO and run your company and look out for your shareholders. And this is not going to help his shareholders, that's for sure.
No, he did not have his shareholders in mind when he made that decision. No. The people he's accountable to. And his customers, he's accountable to them. And then he puts them on blast. Kind of forgot there's the old Michael Jordan adage, people used to say, why don't you speak up on politics? And the famous quote, Republicans buy shoes too.
Good point.
He wasn't interested in being a social justice warrior. He wanted to be an ambassador for his brand and be that smiling face everyone knew and loved. That's Michael Jordan. So maybe we should go and take a little bit a page out of Michael Jordan's book.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the thin end of the wedge, right? It's like this is the first one, but it's going to keep happening. Everything has become so politicized. Every celebrity wants to tell you how to vote. Every corporation now wants to tell you how to vote. And it's like no one can separate anything from politics. Everything has to be political now. And I think that's really sad. And the left always says, oh, everything has always been political. Music has always been political. Art has always been political. And to an extent, they have a point because there's certainly a history of people making political points through their art, which is fine. But it's people also used to have a private life where they would come home from work and they would sit around their table and they would, talk about things that weren't politics. And now it's all politics all the time. And I think it's really dangerous to our, damaging to our mental health, basically. It's really scary that we can't separate out everything else anymore. Like, electoral politics is not the be-all, end-all of society, but people act like it is. And, this whole democracy is at stake thing, I don't understand this at all. Like, why do people think in the middle of an election where everybody's voting that we don't have democracy anymore?
Yeah, and
where's that coming from? Mike, explain that.
Explain why the quote, our democracy is being ruined. I was just thinking about that today. I was like, man, by next Tuesday, half of my social media feed will tell me that democracy is over, one way or the other, and America is over. In reality, it's not. And actually, we've increased democracy because everybody's voting now.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Everybody's voting because Facebook will not let you forget. You have to go vote. It's the other thing about, like, everyone complains about voter suppression. And, like, it's never been easier to vote. Like, there's information about where to vote is everywhere. I've gotten, like, 10 pieces of mail in my mailbox telling me how to vote and where to vote and when to vote. And it's just, and you can vote early. You can vote absentee. They're doing the mail-in ballots. Like, the idea that people can't figure out how to vote, I think, is totally bizarre. I don't know where they're getting that from.
Do you, two questions. A quick step back. For, like, corporate companies, they've spent a ton of time in the recent past. They've all become very social justice warriors. They do a lot of virtue signaling. We support this movement and that movement. Do you think the next step is kind of to where, we just saw companies actually telling you how to vote? Like, right now, we're telling you we're jumping on whatever's popular social justice movement. Like,
right.
Phase 2 is going to be like, most of corporate America is going to be latching on probably to, obviously to the Democrat candidate. Like, there's no way they ever tell you to vote for a Republican candidate. Do you think that is where we're going, or do you think we'll never get there?
I think that's where we're going. And it's odd to me because, like you said, half of consumers are Republicans. So I don't know why it's good for business. There's this slogan, get woke, go broke, where these companies try to virtue signal and they end up losing all their business. And I feel like that's what's going to happen to these companies if they're barraging their customers with propaganda. Like, no one's going to want that. And so I don't know why it's in their best interest to do it. I guess they've just been so taken over by ideology that they can't separate it out from what's in their own business interest.
Politics, to your other point, politics ruins everything. And for that depressing point, I'm going to pour some drinks.
Love it. What kind of bourbon do you have today?
This is called Filibuster Bourbon Whiskey, aged in barrels. Looks like 5 years. I am just playing Russian roulette in the liquor stores recently.
Love it.
I do a quick Google, see what's in front of me. If it doesn't come back terrible, we'll start with a little bit. But give me a review. Leave there.
Is this a Kentucky bourbon?
This might actually be a Virginia bourbon.
Oh.
It's out by me again. I'm biased to supporting the local crafts, Shenandoah Valley.
Our friends at Silverback Distilling insist that bourbon is a Virginia art rather than a Kentucky art, that it originated there. I'm not sure I'm buying it. I feel like it's a Kentucky thing.
Those are some pretty serious fighting words for a Kentuckian.
Yeah.
I did witness our friend way back when get in a debate with Senator Rand Paul, Denver Riggleman Rand Paul, arguing if bourbon could be distilled outside of Kentucky.
Right. Well, legally it can. It's not like a regional protection thing.
Yeah.
The definition of bourbon is it has to have 51% corn in the mash, at least. So, other whiskeys will have more barley and less corn. Yeah. Bourbon has more corn, which is why it's a little bit sweeter. But yeah, legally it can be distilled anywhere. There's like Colorado bourbons, and there's obviously Tennessee bourbons and things like that. Although Jack Daniel's is technically not a bourbon.
Yeah, Jack Daniel's never claims to be a bourbon. And a good Kentuckian would fight pretty much to the death to say that if it's not from Kentucky, it's not bourbon.
Right.
So, respect.
I think that's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. It was pretty
smooth.
Wasn't super expensive either. It was a pretty reasonably priced bottle.
Good.
So, I've been biased towards my Virginia whiskeys recently.
Fair enough. I mean, if it's good whiskey, it's good whiskey. I'm not sure where it comes from.
I'm starting to get quite a collection because of this show. I'm
good. I need to go stock up because we're trying to run through most of my liquors cabinet at this point.
Well, I appreciate your generosity.
And to you as well.
But back to my point that politics ruins everything. I mean, you were just saying that we used to be able to come home, get away from stressful seriousness of life, flick on the game, whatever we wanted to watch and kind of separate ourselves from it. But now you get the NBA is going to inundate you. The NFL seems to be cooling it a little bit, but they've spent a lot of time inundating you with, like, politics has, and now, gosh, you know, they pivoted over to the vote. Everyone's telling you to go vote campaign.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a new social justice campaign. BLM is still out there, but it seems to kind of now fizzled out a little bit. Maybe not. It's not as much.
It's not as violent as it was. We'll see what happens after the election, but I'm not expecting it to be good. We'll see. I think whatever happens, because the election hasn't happened yet as of the time of this recording, I think whatever happens is going to be very divisive and make a lot of people very angry. Yeah. So we'll see. Why? I don't want to talk too much about it because I feel like anything we say about the election is going to look really stupid tomorrow. Yeah. So, you know, we don't want to make any predictions. We want to hedge our bets here. But
I learned my lesson in 2016.
But the Get Out the Vote campaign is something that annoys me because, first of all, it's disingenuous. People don't really just want you to vote for whoever you want to vote for. They want you to vote for their candidate. So they act like, yeah, just go vote. Just go vote for whoever. And I'm like, you don't really want that. You want me to vote for your candidate. And I think that's kind of disingenuous. And then the other thing is, like, I don't know how people think just encouraging people who don't know anything about the candidates, don't know anything about the issues, don't know anything about policy, having them just go kind of like randomly throw a dart at a board and vote. I'm not sure how they think that's going to result in good outcomes for the country. Everyone acts like, yeah, we have to all participate in democracy, which is fair enough if you're informed and if you know what you're talking about and you have like, I feel strongly about this issue, I want to go vote on it, fine. But if you really don't know, like, what good is it doing anyone for you to go vote? It's like, it's just throwing chaos into the machine. You know, you're not actually standing up for anything you believe in. You're just either doing what someone else tells you to do, or you're just kind of randomly voting. And that doesn't seem particularly helpful to me. Yeah,
I think that's the frustration a lot of people have with the Go Vote campaign, because it is disingenuous. You know, they're not. A Krispy Kreme is doing on election day, if you show up with your I voted sticker, you get a free certain amount of donuts. And I'm curious, if you show up in a MAGA hat, is it going to be like the Seinfeld, you know, the soup Nazi?
No donuts for you.
No donuts for you. Get out.
I don't know. I may take advantage of that, though. I like Krispy Kreme donuts a lot.
Yeah, throw that I voted sticker. Although, do you vote?
Oh, I do vote. I always vote, but I don't pressure anybody else to vote. And I don't think it's particularly important that people vote if they don't want to. People get so angry with you if you say you don't vote, and they're like, you're, you know, abdicating your civic duty. You're not doing your part. But like, it's your choice. It's, you know, it's up to you whether you want to vote or not. Like, I think that there's a certain aspect of signaling that goes into voting. And if there's a really low voter turnout, that signals people that, like, the candidates are unpopular and nobody wants to vote for them. And I think that the fact that signal exists is helpful. And the same thing with, like, third-party votes. If a lot of people vote third party, it shows we're not happy with the status quo. We want to change it. So it's not really about winning. People always say, oh, well, why would you vote for a candidate who's not going to win? And first of all, I would say to that, well, it's not like a lottery where you get a prize for predicting the winner. Like, you're predicting the winner doesn't do anything. It's your vote is your opportunity to tell the powers that be, this is what I want. And so if you're telling them you want something you don't want, you can't really complain when you get it.
Why do you think there's such vitriol around, like, if I say, oh, I don't vote, like, I've almost committed a mortal sin now. Like, why is there such anger? Or, I don't care.
I don't know. I think it's really odd, but it's like something that's been drilled into people from childhood is like, you have to vote. It's like that South Park episode where they had the vote or die song, which is actually, it became reality this year. Someone actually did say vote or die. Like, they just want you to be a part of the process. And I think it's like, it has to do with legitimizing the system. Like, one of the reasons that I respect people who don't vote is if they do it on principle, it's because they don't want to legitimize the system. Because government is coercion, government is force. And if you go in and say, hey, I want this guy to be the one in charge of the coercion, you're kind of legitimizing it. At least I understand that argument. Yeah. I don't fully agree with it, because I think, you know, if someone's saying you get to choose who's going to coerce you, I don't think, you know, trying to choose the lesser of those two evils is necessarily endorsing the coercion. You're just trying to, you know, maximize your own benefit and minimize the harm that's going to be done to you. So I don't judge people for that either. But I just think that the idea that you have to vote to legitimize the system is a little bit silly.
Yeah, I think not voting, I mean, tell me if you agree or disagree, not voting is a vote in and of itself.
Yeah. As the Rush lyric goes, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
And hopefully still, I think that a higher voter turnout, people are like, oh, it's so great, a high vote turnout. And I disagree with that. I think high voter turnout, signifies that there's a lot of tension. I think it's a bad sign for the state of society.
Right.
It signals that people are very stressed about the outcome of an election. I would prefer a lower voter turnout, not because of any kind of suppression, but because people are like, well, regardless of who wins, my life is not that disrupted.
Yeah, it shows that people think there's a lot at stake if there's a high voter turnout. And there really shouldn't be a lot at stake in these elections. Like, we shouldn't have our entire way of life turn on a dime every time there's an election. We shouldn't be like, oh man, if my candidate loses this election, I'm going to be, whatever. I'm going to have my rights stripped away, or I'm going to be locked in prison, or I'm going to have my taxes go up so much I won't be able to afford it, or they're going to destroy my business, or whatever it is. That shouldn't be the stakes of the election. It shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah, and in regards, just the intensity around what you said earlier, kind of struck with me how so many people are saying go vote, but so many people actually don't know. I mean, I barely know enough of the issues, and I can nerd out on it for a while, but I think that shows why smaller government is just more efficient and better, because if you have a bunch of people who just, everyone's busy with their lives. You have jobs, you have family, you have other responsibilities, you have other interests. Like, we don't have time to consume ourselves studying every ins and out of laws and policies and stuff. So we should want the central federal government to be so minuscule it doesn't really matter that much, because if I'm just ignorantly casting a vote and that could alter other people's lives so impactfully, like, that's not a good place to be.
No, and there's a thing economists talk about which is called rational ignorance, where they recognize that the effort you have to put into figuring out who to vote for is significant. And the benefit you get for casting the vote is pretty small, because no election is ever decided by a single vote. So your vote that you cast is not going to swing the election either way. So it kind of, in that sense, it kind of doesn't matter. And then you have to put in all the effort to learn about all these candidates, all these issues, and it takes a lot of time. And so it's rational from a profit maximization standpoint, a utility maximization standpoint, although I don't believe in that. That's another thing. It's rational to not bother. Like, there's in D.C., the local elections, there's like 16 candidates on the city council ballot or something.
Oh my gosh.
It takes a long time to go through them all and figure out what they're all about. And I think I got through 10. And I was like, that's okay, I'm just voting Libertarian, it doesn't matter. But it's like, you can't expect people to know everything about these candidates, especially when there's not televised debates and there's, the only information you have about them is maybe a Facebook page. A lot of these people don't even have a website. There's, signs you see up on polls, but they don't tell you anything. They just tell you someone put up a sign. So there's a good reason not to want to bother to vote, because you're not getting anything out of it, and you're actually expending a lot of time and energy learning about it that you could be spending on more profitable things for yourself. Yeah,
and I guess where you just spent all that time going through 10 of 16 candidates, I guess a lot of people complain, like, oh, everyone, they just vote R, or they just vote D, and they don't even look at the issues. But obviously, there's a lot of effort that has to go into actually digging through all the issues. So that R or the D helps solve the knowledge problem.
It helps. It does.
It's supposed to.
Yeah. No, it does. It does help to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It gives you a shorthand of, like, I basically know what this candidate stands for by that party affiliation. Like, all the candidates except for I think 3 on the city council thing are independents. So, like, I like to vote for independents if I find one I like. But after going through 8 of them, and they were all like, we want DC statehood, we want higher taxes, we want guaranteed housing for poor people, we want government-run healthcare. They want all the stuff that I don't want. And so I was like, all these people are the same. I'm not going to vote for any of them, because I'm pretty sure in DC, none of these people are going to stand for what I stand for, except for maybe if they're affiliated with the Libertarian Party, in which case I might want to vote for them. But I still try to find out. But and I know shorthand for these things because I worked in policy for many years. And so I can kind of glance at a candidate's website and their issue page, and I know all the little code words for things. I know if they say this, what they really mean. If they say something that sounds good, I know it really means, we want to abolish fossil fuels and have all green energy, or we want to raise taxes, or we want to do ban cars, or whatever it is. I know what all those code words are because I've been steeped in it for years. But the average person doesn't know that, and so they read all the websites and they're all like, "We want to make things better for poor people. We want to make life more inclusive." And like, that sounds good. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good to me. And then they vote, but they don't have a way of knowing what these people really mean by those positions, unless you're going to go find televised interviews or written articles about them that really delve into what their really beliefs are. It's hard to know what people actually stand for.
Yeah, and I think that there's a danger too. I don't know if it's a huge danger, but it's interesting because I'll complain that like, oh, the Republican Party doesn't really stand for the same things they did under Reagan.
True.
And granted, we use the R or the D or the L for the Libertarian Party to help solve the knowledge problems. So we don't have to dig through a exponential amount of candidates. But then it also allows for values and principles to kind of shift without you knowing.
Right.
You're not voting for the same party that folks who voted in the 80s, the 70s, or the 60s, whatever party you're going for is anymore. And you have, the aging greatest generation and the baby boomers coming up after that who, they're still voting like they're voting for JFK, LBJ, and these blue dog Democrats. And you could argue that everyone's shifted left. I think America's shifted left. I would argue Trump fits more into the Democrat Party of the 60s, but no one noticed it.
He was a Democrat until he ran for president.
Yeah.
So everyone forgets that. So yeah, he's not like everyone thinks he's this far-right guy. He's not a far-right guy at all. He's kind of a center guy. But yeah, and he's more of a pragmatist. He's not really an ideologue. But the other thing I like about voting for parties who aren't going to win, like the Libertarian Party, is like, I'm not worried that they're going to get into office and do horrible things. I just know that, so I don't even really have to worry too much about the person, but I know that by voting Libertarian, I'm sending a signal that more people want these Libertarian ideas. More people like the broad values that the Libertarian Party stands for. And I don't have to worry about the personality so much because he's not going to win anyway. So it's nice to be able to send that signal, and if enough people send that signal, even though like everyone says, oh yeah, the Libertarian's not going to win, and on the national stage with the presidential candidate, they're right. But if enough people vote for that person, it sends a signal to politicians that, oh, this person's getting a lot of votes by appealing to this liberty mindset. Maybe I should do that too. And so that's another way of kind of solving the rational ignorance problem, is that shorthand of being like, I don't know if his policies are actually good or bad, but he's not going to win, so I can send my signal and say I want more liberty policies.
Yeah, I mean, that's so someone like a Ron Paul who always put up the fight, even though he always came up short, he sent a huge signal to
and well, that's why we had the whole Freedom Caucus and the whole Tea Party wave was because he was sending signal to the Republican Party that these ideas can get votes. Even if they don't get enough votes to win, they can get some votes. So you had a lot more members who were willing to run on those ideas thinking that they might be able to get votes. And a lot of them did. We got Thomas Massey, we got Mike Lee, we got Rand Paul, and that was great.
You could argue that a Ron Paul failed primary bid was more impactful than a John McCain or Mitt Romney failed general election bid.
Absolutely, it was. Yeah. I think that's for sure.
I wouldn't argue against it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they had no impact on the direction of the country with and even if they had become president, I would still argue that Ron Paul, culture-wise, would have still had a bigger impact.
I think there would have been very little difference between, like, I don't know, a McCain presidency and an Obama presidency.
No, I don't think there would have been much at all.
Not much of a difference, because McCain is a pretty far left Republican as far as Republicans go.
If you actually look at the policy without going down this rabbit hole, since 2000 or 9/11, there really hasn't been much difference policy-wise.
No.
Between Bush, Obama, and even into Trump. Trump has had some changes. At least he pays lip service to changing our foreign policy. He's done a few things differently, but really, on the average, it's been pretty much same old, same old. It just depends if you feel good because your guy's in office or not.
Yeah, that's what I think is so silly, is people act like it's the end of the world if their party loses, and I'm like, what policy is really going to change? Like I saw people just freak out and lose their minds over the Amy Coney Barrett nomination or appointment, because she's confirmed now. People are very, very upset about that, and they're like, "Oh, my rights are being stripped away." I'm like, what's going to realistically change with her on the court? Like, they think she's going to repeal Roe v. Wade. It's not going to happen. They're not going to repeal Roe v. Wade. Abortion is still widely available throughout every state. You can get it. It's affordable. Like, it's not going away anytime soon. People are deluding themselves that they think it's going away anytime soon, and people forget that the original Roe v. Wade case was decided with a Republican majority on the court. And liberals have progressives have won pretty much every major Supreme Court decision since I can remember, except for Citizens United, which they're still been out of shape about. But, they won the gay marriage case. They won the Obamacare case. So, like, I don't understand this fear. And I think it's all just brainwashing. We think if the other team gets into power, they're going to destroy it. But the two teams do the same thing, no matter who's in power.
Here's the elephant in the room question. Does your vote matter, Logan?
Not really, because, like I said,
mortal sin. Everyone's mad at you.
It matters from a signaling perspective, but it doesn't matter in terms of swinging elections, because the election is not going to be swung by your vote. So you don't get to pick the winner of the election. That's just a fact. It's just a statistical reality. You don't get to pick who wins the election. but you can choose to send a message with your vote. And that's why I think that everyone's obsessed with winning. They're like, your candidate has to win or else there's no point in voting for them. And no, they don't. It's just a matter of people can see what the mandate from the American people is. What do they want by how they voted? And, there's a difference between a candidate winning by a huge margin and a candidate winning by just a razor-thin margin. Because, you can declare a mandate and say, look, everybody in America wants what I'm offering. I'm going to run with it. Whereas if you won by a razor-thin margin, you got to be a little bit more diplomatic. And so your vote matters in that sense, but it doesn't matter in terms of picking who wins because you're not going to pick who wins.
Yeah, and I guess there's a slight. I agree with you. I don't think our vote matters as much as we would like it to, and I think that's fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal. There's always the argument like, well, if you walk by a field full of flowers, I can pick a flower. It doesn't matter. Look at all the flowers. If everyone picks a flower or everyone doesn't vote, okay, then, but that's not reality. And when I tell people, everyone gets bent out of shape. Oh, and I'm in Virginia. I know Virginia's going blue. So technically my vote doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's the nice thing about living in D.C. is that it's not going to change a thing. I can vote however I want. All the people who come after me and say, your vote for a third party is a vote for Biden or your vote for a third party is a vote for Trump. I'm like, no, D.C. has no electoral votes. I think maybe they have one. But, it's going blue. There's no question about it. So I can vote for what I really want to see, and I can send that signal to the Electoral College and say, that's what I want, and it's not going to matter. And so I don't see any reason not to vote for what I want instead of just trying to strategically vote for the lesser of two evils.
Are you comfortable with that? Like, some people would say, oh, we should have a popular vote because I feel like my vote doesn't matter. Are you comfortable being like, yeah, I know where I live. I know how my electoral votes are going. It's fine. It's going blue.
Yeah, I'm okay this is controversial because every libertarian and conservative I know disagrees with me on this. And I'm fully prepared to admit that I might be wrong. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about the popular vote and the Electoral College. And I think the Electoral College, when it was first set up with proportional representation, where the state would proportionally allocate its delegates and its electoral votes among a variety of candidates, I think that was good. That was fine. But now with all the winner-take-all stuff, I think it really disenfranchises people to have the Electoral College because you have millions of Republicans in California whose votes just don't count. If 51% of Californians vote blue, all those Republican votes don't even get counted. They're gone. And then same thing in Texas, all the Democrats in Texas, and there's a lot of Democrats in Texas, if it goes 51% red, they get all the electoral votes, and the Democratic votes were essentially wasted because they don't get counted. And I think that's a bad thing. I think that disenfranchises people. And everyone says, oh, if we had a popular vote, the big cities would get to choose everything. They get to choose who runs the country. And I'm like, I just don't think that's necessarily the case because there's large population centers all over the country, and there's lots of populations. I mean, if you look at party registration, I think Republicans have an edge in terms of party registration nationally. So I don't see any reason to think that Democrats would always win under that system. And the other thing, as I resent about that idea, is that you're assuming that because of where someone lives, you're going to assume how they're going to vote. And while it's true that the big cities tend to vote Democrat, there are Republicans who live in big cities, and their votes should be counted too. And I just think it's kind of a collectivist notion to say, well, because you live in that state, you're going to vote this way no matter what. Well, people can move around. People are free to move from state to state, from city to city, and there's nothing that says they have to vote a certain way based on where they live. And the way it works now with the Electoral College is if you live in California and you cross the border into, say, Utah, suddenly your vote counts more because of the Electoral College. So you could be a Democrat who lives in California, move over to Utah, and have your Democratic vote count more because you're now voting in a less populous state that has a disproportionately high number of electoral votes to its population.
Yeah, interesting. I did not expect you to have that take, Logan, so you caught me off guard.
I know, I'm the only one. Everybody disagrees with me, and I'm perfectly willing to hear the arguments and consider that I might be wrong, but I've heard many arguments from many very smart people, and I've never been convinced.
Yeah, I would disagree. I like the Electoral College only simply because in my mind it keeps at bay the larger population areas. It helps keep there certainly creates a tension between. It helps rural America stay a little bit more in line with the urban America.
Yeah.
I know I buy the argument that it forces the candidates to go and actually take their message into different diverse areas. But
what about a candidate, say a Republican candidate? There's no reason for a Republican candidate to campaign in California right now.
Yeah, they're not going to go there.
So if we got rid of the Electoral College, there would be a reason for Republicans to campaign in California because every vote they got additionally in California would matter just the same as every vote they got in Texas or every vote they got in Ohio or Florida. There wouldn't be these just couple of swing states where everybody we have to make sure Ohio and Florida go for us because those are the ones deciding the election. Every vote would count the same. And so there'd be an incentive to campaign for every vote all over the country.
No, that's a good point. I've only, you hear the argument of, they would spend all their time in LA and Miami and New York City, getting the big political. But right now, there no Republican walks into California. What's the point of going into California and bringing that argument? It's just those votes belong to the Democrats. And,
right.
So, no, that's a strong argument I haven't even considered or pushed back on or had an opportunity to push back on.
I got another one, too, if you want.
Shoot, fired away.
So this is one I've never heard anyone talk about except for me, but I think it's a compelling point, is everyone always says, well, we need the Electoral College to protect minority rights, so it's not just majority rule. Fair enough, right? We got to protect the rural voters so that the urban elites don't just decide for them, okay? But if your argument is we have to protect minority rights by weighting their votes more heavily, then why don't you weight every minority's vote more heavily? Why don't we weight racial minorities' votes more heavily? Why don't we weight sexual orientations votes more heavily if they're minorities? There's no reason, if that's your logic, there's no reason not to give higher weighting to people's votes depending on what minority group they belong to. Why just urban and rural? Why just Central America and coasts? Why not do it for races? Why not do it for sexual orientations? Why not do it for genders? Why not do it for religions? The Jewish vote is only 2% of the American population, I think. They're a minority. So why don't we weight Jews' votes higher than Christian votes so that they won't be trampled on? Because, clearly, different minority and majority groups, different demographic groups have different interests when it comes to national policy. And so if you're worried about the majority group oppressing the minority group with a straight majority vote, then why wouldn't you kind of try to tailor the vote to give more power to the minorities in other areas as well? And that's an argument that I think resonates with Republicans because they're like, I don't want to do that. That would be nuts. We can't weight people's votes more heavily just because they're in a minority group. But that's exactly what the Electoral College does in terms of urban and rural minorities.
Bold argument, Logan.
What do you think?
It's a good point, especially you're taking the progressive talking point, or at least shoving it back into the putting it in the Republicans' lap. All right, if you're for the minority, well then what about race, gender, sexual orientation, religion? Okay, instead of just rural America. I mean, that is certainly just put me mentally on my heels a little bit. Like, whoa. I mean, I'll give you the credit there. And maybe I do hate. I hate the idea of majority rule. I just see it as there's not much difference between a king trampling on people's rights and a majority trampling on people's rights. So that's why the idea of a republic, putting in more checks and balances to kind of...
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that. Basically, that's what the Constitution is for. And
basically solidifying rights you can never take away. I don't care if 100% of you vote to turn something away, you can't take these rights away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the point of the Constitution. Yeah. And we need the three branches of government to be checks and balances on each other. And, I'm with you on the Senate being getting rid of the 17th Amendment and having the Senate be elected by the state governments instead of by the popular vote, because I think that would be a check on the majority rule. And that's the way it was intended by the founders. So, I'm okay with those kind of arguments. And then, governor elections are done by popular vote.
They are.
No one complains about that and says we need to have an electoral college for state elections. They just say for the president. And I don't know what's special about the president that we need that rather than governors. Governors arguably have more power over the people they represent than the president.
Each state is its own popular vote. We just have we have 50 popular votes on November, the first Tuesday in November.
And historically, it makes a little bit of sense because the states were separate entities. They were separate little countries, essentially, that all came together, and each state is going to get a vote. But the distribution of the vote seems a little bit arbitrary to me because, we have 2 senators per state, regardless of population. So why don't we just give one electoral college vote to every state and make it all even that way? That seems like a bad idea to me too, because you could either have the two extremes are nationwide popular vote, 1 vote per person, all people's votes count the same, or the other extreme is every state gets 1 vote and every state's vote counts the same, and we've kind of split the difference down the middle. But that line seems a little bit arbitrary to me. How do you decide how far in each direction you go?
Yeah. And now that I've digested a little bit of your argument, I'll give you the people that fearmonger getting rid of the Electoral College, which I am still opposed to.
Yeah.
But the argument is, we go to a full popular vote, they will only campaign, as we've said a couple times now, in the major areas. But those, to your point also, those major areas have never heard the Republican small government libertarian argument before. So who's to say what happens once that argument and those ideas are brought into that area?
Right.
You can't predict it. So to assume they're always going to vote that way is collectivist, to your point. So
Yeah.
you've weakened my confidence in my own ideas a little bit.
That's what I'm really here for, is to weaken your confidence. That's the whole point of this show.
I'm questioning my reality.
How can I make Mike just doubt his own existence?
We haven't gotten there yet, but dang
Yeah.
it. I feel like I've taken a blow, but now I'm going to go ponder this and come back.
Well, we're not going to solve it today, but I just these are the thoughts I've had about the Electoral College for years. And I always, whenever I meet like a constitutional scholar or someone who I really respect, I always ask them, like, what are your arguments in favor of the Electoral College? Because I want to hear the best arguments possible and be persuaded that I might be wrong, because I'm the only person in the libertarian space or in the conservative space who has this opinion that I've ever met. And so I'm fully prepared to admit that I have missed something, but I have not yet been convinced by anybody. So I'm always welcome to hear those arguments.
I'd be curious Matt's take on this, Kibby's. Because
I've asked him before. I have never really gotten a strong answer out of him. He's never really.
I feel like he would
to
favor.
engage.
He's a big democracy guy. Everyone should vote. I'm on the other side.
I don't know.
Everyone
I don't know
should
where
stay
he
home.
stands.
It's not worth it.
He likes to play his cards close to the chest. He doesn't really come out and say what he thinks about a lot of these things. And I pushed him on it before, but I don't really know where he is.
We're going to get it out of him.
We'll get it out of him. We'll have him on the show one of these days and figure out what he stands. I'm going to push him on all the issues I've never gotten an answer from him on.
Oh, man.
And just keep drilling down until he's forced to answer on camera.
Not a safe space for Kibby.
No, certainly not.
Or my confidence.
No.
Well, sir, it has been enjoyable.
It's been a pleasure, Mike.
Next time we get together,
Let's hope that the country is not on fire
Yeah.
the next time we get together, and everything can be resolved peacefully and pleasantly.
Yeah, we'll see. Next time we get together, we'll know who's going to be president for the next 4 years.
Yes, that's right. Hopefully, unless it
Yeah,
is
gosh,
contested.
I hope so. God, I
hope
don't
so,
want
too.
4 months of... No, I don't care.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. See you later.
You finished yours. Good job.